The world has been going through an economic slowdown over the past few years, and it has recently been discovered that a major reason behind this could be the shadow banking sector in China. What does it mean? Stick around as we explain in detail. So the first question that comes to mind is, what exactly is shadow banking? Well, shadow banking refers to a sector in the Chinese economy that funnels money into a wide range of investments across various sectors of the economy, apart from the usual channel of lending with the help of banks. The key thing to note is that they are not subject to oversight by the regulatory bodies. And unlike the name suggests, these are not companies that exist in the shadows, and on the contrary, are companies which are pretty famous and widely known in China. The major factor to be taken into account here is that China has an official interest rate on bank deposits of less than 1.5%. But with the help of shadow banking, the trust companies have offered the Chinese investors a much higher interest or return on their savings than conventional bank deposits have. This also means that such investments ensure the investors protection against the potential loss of capital. At this point in time, the shadow banking sector is said to be worth $3 trillion, and that is the amount for China alone. Now, the higher rates of interest or return on investment were easy for the trust companies to offer when the growth rate of China was in 2 digits. But with the pandemic and other global phenomena changing the global economic landscape, it has become more and more difficult for the trust companies to keep ensuring such high returns. A major chunk of the assets invested through the trust sector or shadow banks were directed to the real estate market, which has jumped from one crisis to another in recent years. According to a study by Goldman Sachs, the estimated losses that would go to the Chinese trust sector or shadow banking sector could potentially reach $38 billion. But as mentioned earlier, the Chinese shadow banking sector was met with one crisis after another, and something that was long awaited happened when the Chinese real estate company Evergrande filed for bankruptcy. This is a huge deal because the Evergrande Group was one of China's biggest real estate firms with more than 1,300 projects that spanned over 280 cities. But in 2021, they fell behind on their bond payments to their investors. That is, they defaulted on their debts, which, as expected, sent shockwaves across the global financial systems. Evergrande defaulting on their debts also started a chain reaction with other real estate firms defaulting on theirs as they were owed money by Evergrande or were expecting that Evergrande Group to fulfill some contracts with them. And because of this, from 2021, the companies that make up almost 40% of China's housing sector have defaulted on their debt obligations. All of this starting because a single company, Evergrande, defaulted on their debt. In fact, Evergrande's debt obligations grew so much that they owed more money to others than any other company in the world. The estimate of their debt reached $300 billion to pinpoint the exact figure. Adding to that amount, the company also faced losses of about $80 billion in the last couple years. Again, the company was so big and influential that other companies relied on them for resources and loans. This meant when Evergrande defaulted, it started a domino effect. The loss of $80 billion in just 2 years also meant that the company's shares have faced a trading halt over the last year. And to put into perspective what $300 billion means with respect to the country, $300 billion amounts to 2% of the nation's GDP. GDP is the total amount of economic output that the country produces in a year, and Evergrande was responsible for 2% of that. When things got to such a bad situation, the company finally filed for bankruptcy under Chapter 15. Chapter 15 bankruptcy refers to a means to protect companies that are not from the United States and their assets from being taken over by their creditors. This is particularly helpful for Evergrande as they are an international company that has connections and debts all over the world. Filing for bankruptcy under Chapter 15 gives them safety of not being sued by their creditors from all over the world, especially the United States. But why should we care about one company in China collapsing? And more importantly, how does the collapse of one company affect the global economy? Well, this happens because the world is a $105 trillion economy. And out of that, China accounts for almost $20 trillion, making it the second largest in the world, coming second only to the United States. This means that in an integrated global economy that we live in today, a downfall in the Chinese economy also echoes in the economy of the US. In fact, this is the reason for the recent reduction in the stock prices, as well as the reduction in the value of cryptocurrencies. The downfall of Evergrande turns eyeballs towards Country Garden, another real estate firm in China, which is actually bigger than the Evergrande Group. And the downfall of Evergrande can be seen as a foresight into what could actually be a much bigger problem. The fact of the matter is that the global economic slowdown has been coming for a while now, and China has seen such a massive slowdown as well as seen a massive increase in unemployment over the past few years that they're actually trying to hide the actual data from the public. An increase in unemployment also means that the housing sector has seen a slowdown, with people unable to purchase houses or even unable to pay rents. And China, as a nation, depends extensively on their real estate sector. Hence, the slowdown in the housing market proves to have a hefty impact on the Chinese economy as a whole. The sudden economic slowdown in China also meant that the country is facing a situation of deflation, which means the prices of products are going down. Wait, that is a good thing, right? Not in an economic sense, no. This reduction in prices is actually taking place because people are not spending money. When consumers spend less, it means that the overall investments of the country goes down as well, because in economic terms, savings equal investments. Now, while Evergrande might just be the beginning, the company filing for bankruptcy foreshadows a much larger threat to the Chinese economy, a much bigger scare in the form of a company that is almost 4 times the size of Evergrande, Country Garden, whose owner had actually become the richest woman in China. And the situation with Country Garden is worse because it came out of nowhere. Since 2021, there had been rumors about the failing system at Evergrande, and for that reason, people actually got time to prepare themselves. But nobody saw a potential failure coming from Country Garden, as they are supposed to be China's largest real estate developer with quite some cash in their financial reports. In fact, the firm had promised to deliver close to 700,000 properties, but as of 2023, they have only been able to deliver close to 350,000, almost half of what they promised. And even that they delivered with difficulty. In the meantime, the company has also missed 2 bond payments to their shareholders. All of this has combined to cause Country Garden losing almost 40% in share price value in just the last month, and almost 72% of share price value since the beginning of the year. The reduction in the stock price means that as of 6 September, the stock is only worth 0.13 USD or 13 cents. Quick reminder that Country Garden has over 4 times the projects that Evergrande had, which means that if they collapse, the companies around the globe that have bought the bonds issued by Country Garden would also be massively affected. And there are some pretty big names that have bought these bonds, like JP Morgan, BlackRock, Fidelity International, and even UBS. Now the good news is that the numbers are in the 100 million odds, which seems like a massive amount. But when we look at it relative to the balance sheets of the companies, which shows amounts in the trillions, a 100 million USD seems like a pretty small amount. Now comes the big numbers. Remember how the world economy is worth 105 trillion USD? According to reports from 2019, the shadow banking industry is worth over $52 trillion. This means that more than half of the world's economy is part of shadow banking. But again, it does not exist in regulatory purview, meaning it is quite difficult to pinpoint the actual size in the shadow banking sector. And out of this, China's shadow banking industry is worth more than $3 trillion, maybe more. And that industry is heavily dependent on real estate. This means that if the real estate industry collapses, so does the shadow banking sector, which triggers a domino effect leading to a global economic collapse. According to reports, a global economic rise is expected to be seen sometime next year, but as of now, all we can do is hope for the best. Well, that brings us to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more economic news. Until next time, bye.